Take one, take two. Okay.
Who are you?
I'm Reverend Dr. Albert P. Rowe, pastor of Calvary Baptist Church. I'm a native of Columbia, South Carolina, but grew up in Syracuse, New York. I moved to Patterson in November 1968.
And can you tell me something about your background, how you became a minister?
After graduating from high school in Syracuse, I attended Morgan State University, where I played football and was a wrestling champion. And I should add that I was also captain of the football team and wrestling team. I was a sport editor of the newspaper, heavily involved in community and campus politics. I became involved in the movement while I was at Morgan. The civil rights revolution burst forth in Montgomery in 1955. In 1956, students at Morgan State College had its own protest movement. There was a lunch counter. There was a restaurant about 4 blocks from the campus, and we couldn't eat at the lunch counters. And because of the involvement of Dr. King and Rosa Parks and the people in Montgomery, Alabama, we decided that we would boycott that restaurant. And every day around 11:15, students would occupy all of the seats so that people who worked in that vicinity couldn't sit down and have their lunch. One thing people have forgotten is that this was a youth movement. It was not the seniors. And the manager of the restaurant called the president of the college, Dr. Jenkins, and informed him that we were disrupting the restaurant, creating problems, and killing his business. And the dean, Dean Cowell, called a meeting of all those who had participated in these sit-ins. And the word went throughout campus that we're going to be suspended or expelled from school. And we went into the assembly scared to death we would be thrown out of school. And the dean said, we were called and told that you were disrupting the business at this restaurant. And the manager said that you must get those kids out of there. And we waited and waited because the hammer is going to drop, we thought. And then he said, but we told him that this is a liberal arts school, and we teach that America's democracy. And not only do we support the students protesting, but we encourage them. And the assembly went up, wow. The amazing thing is that we did not realize that they had been in the struggle a long time. We thought that we was doing something new, but they had also been involved. And I think that during those early days, too frequently, we felt that we were doing something new, and the older people didn't know anything about what we was getting involved in. Matter of fact, during that time, we used to say, you can't trust anybody over 30, because when you come 30, you're concerned about having a house, having a car, and having security. And if you were involved in the movement, you didn't have any of these things. Your life was at stake every day.
And what happened when you came to Patterson? In fact, how did you come about coming to Patterson?
I had pastored in Wilmington, Delaware for 6 years. Reverend Kern, my predecessor, died, and the church looked for a pastor. And it just so happened that they called me to come here to assume the pastorate of this great church. I had been involved in civil rights movement in Wilmington. I participated in sit-ins, was arrested. I was vice president of the NAACP there, the Wilmington branch of NAACP. I was chairman of the state legislative committee. Now, I tell you, I didn't know a thing about anything back then, but they put me in that position because I was a young preacher. And I want to say that my committee was responsible for opening up Route 13 from New York to Washington. But I was chairman of the legislative committee. I didn't know anything about strategy, didn't know anything, but I was tagging along. Also, while I was there, I was selected by the NAACP to go with the president of the chapter to Selma, and I participated in that. One of the things that amazed me was that you had young children whose feet couldn't touch the floor, but they're very caught up in what was going on in our nation. One other sidelight to show my immaturity was that we're in this long line getting ready to leave the church to march to City Hall, and police were there with their billy clubs and on their horses, and young people were in convertibles, and they had bats and chains, and it was calling us all sorts of names. And I turned to Reverend Morgan, the president of the Wilmington branch NAACP, and I said, a good thing the police is here. And he said, yeah, but they're not on our side. And what had happened, I had gone there because the Sunday before, we witnessed on television how they brutalized people, how they beat them with clubs, how they put dogs on them. And the ranch decided that we would answer the call of Dr. King of people coming to Selma. And I was selected to go with Reverend Maurice Moyer. And we went there, and we participated in that. And that was a very, I can't say exciting, but was a rewarding experience. I remember the newspaper came to interview me about going there and what I felt. And I really didn't realize how dangerous it was until the reporter asked my wife, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about your husband going south, participating in this march? She says, I know that he may get killed, may not come back. But it's something he has to do, and I want him to do it. And then she started crying. And I wondered, why was she crying? But that was an exciting time.
Now you're in Patterson.
Yes, I'm in Patterson.
It's 1968.
Yes.
And were you here when Dr. King came?
No, I was not. I came probably 2 or 3 months after he had come to Patterson. There was turmoil in the city when I came in November. The one thing I remember, and I made a statement from our pulpit, was that there had been violence in the streets. Police had knocked out windows of business people. They had attacked innocent citizens. They had put dogs on them. And I never forgot that the newspaper said, Connie Bragg Sr. is an honorable, respected businessman in the city of Patterson. And they made that statement, and then they said he witnessed police knocking out windows and beating people. And then they totally disregarded it. I thought it was very ironic that they would say that he was a respectable man and then totally disregard what he said.
Now you came here, you had a lot of experience with civil rights. You kind of grew up in it. You were instrumental in another city with civil rights. Now you come here to a city in a northern state that has all this turmoil, and you're a young pastor. How did you feel about that?
I was excited about coming to Patterson. I thought there was a lot of opportunity here, and I welcomed it. I came here in November. In February, I received a phone call from Art Eason and a young lady by the name of Ellaby, who were counselors at Eastside High School. They informed me that there are some things that the community ought to be involved in, and they wanted me to help because I was young, I guess, and because they read about my record. And I met with them, and there were probably about 40 students who were protesting the conditions in the school and were not going to class. And they said, won't you help us? And I said to him, what we have to do is get all the students to stop going to class. The Board of Education at that time would not listen to him, would not sit down and dialogue with him. What they wanted was to have Mr. Smith be named as the first black assistant principal at Eastside High School. And they had some other things. They wanted to knock out the track system. They wanted to get more counselors, get uniforms for the band and the football team, and they wanted to have a black flag in the classroom. And they said, we're not even talking to you about it. I said, we got to get the entire city involved and get the entire student body. So I went to the ministers, went to the pastors' workshop. I had no influence, didn't know anybody. And I told them what had happened and encouraged them to come and participate. And because I was new, and because I was young, and because they couldn't let me go out there and do something, they all came. I had no influence whatsoever. And so the ministers came, and we decided we would call a citywide boycott. Not just at East Side, but a citywide boycott. And we decided to have a meeting that Sunday at St. Luke's Baptist Church, and which we did. And it was chaotic. What happened there was chaotic. Let me back up and say that on Friday, Mrs. Rauschenbach, who's the president of the board, called me and said, Reverend Rowe, we're ready to sit down with you. And I said, well, I can't tell you what we can do. I have to check with the kids. So I went and talked to the kids. I said, they're willing now to sit down and talk about your demands. What should we do? And they said, go. I said, yeah, but the leaders of the city, black leaders of the city, have called a mass meeting on Wednesday, and we're on TV, and they said they were not going to talk to the superintendent and the Board of Education no matter what until they had implemented the Columbian plan and fired the superintendent. And they said, Reverend Rowe, we started this. This is our thing. They didn't come when we needed them. You go and negotiate. So I went. And we got everything that youngsters had said they wanted. However, that did not put me in a very good light with the black leadership in the city of Patterson, because I met with them that Monday and they said, well, you came in this city and started doing stuff and then checked with the leadership. And I responded by saying, I didn't know no leadership was here. So I was in very bad, for a number of years, I was in very bad position.
Knowing that Dr. King had been here, you had marched with Dr. King, you'd been a part of that movement, and I'm sure that you felt some of the sentiments of the people who were kind of emotional about his death, emotional about him coming here, and still going through that struggle. When you got a chance, did you visit Community Baptist Church of Rowe?
Oh yes, I visited the church. I preached there. I knew Reverend Fred Lagarde very well. He was a community activist, which I consider myself as a young man. He had worked with Dr. King before he came here, and so I know the church very well.
How important is that church?
It's tremendously important. It's a symbol to all who live here now, and it should be a symbol to generations to come, because Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the great prophet of God, the social activist of the 20th century, and a patriot of the people, should be remembered. And this is a reminder that he was a man just like everybody else, that he bled, he suffered, he endured pain, but he had a vision, and he was willing to give his life for it.
What does the designation of this church mean to you?
The designation is very, very important, because if the federal government designates it, it will have the responsibility also to maintain it, upkeep it. And I think that the government can do things to put it in the type light that it should be.
And it should definitely be an historical landmark in the city of Patterson, along with the Great Falls and all the other great things they're doing here.
It's a landmark for Patterson, for New Jersey, and for America. And there's no, I can think of one reason why I should not be designated.
Thank you.
Reverend Rowe, we're going to go back a little bit.
Okay.
What was the question?
What made
Back here on me.
Okay.
yes, what the
What made you, or why did you choose to go to the school that you
Ask
did?
the impact, because I have several things that he did.
what was the impact, Dr. King?
Okay. Well,
Okay, what was the impact of Dr. King on you?
other than my parents, Dr. King had the greatest impact of anyone on earth on me. Because of him, I chose the seminary I attended, the fraternity I joined, the social activism in life, and also to be committed to nonviolence. So he's had a tremendous impact on me.
The question is, have you ever had an opportunity to
Okay. Let me say that. Okay. 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 You ready? Okay.
You want me to ask her?
I've had a unique experience in that I attended the first March on Washington, sponsored by Dr. King. That was in 1956, when they called the prayer pilgrimage. And I attended that in 1957. In 1956, after I joined my fraternity, I was selected to be the delegate to the Alpha's 50th anniversary. I went over to Bernie Sanders in April, and in August, I attended the convention in Buffalo, New York, because coming from Syracuse, I was the closest member of the fraternity to the city, and they had asked all chapters to send a delegate. And Dr. King was the speaker. And I remember the speech, the 3 dimensions to a complete life. And in 1958, he was the commencement speaker at my seminary, at my college in Morgan. And again, he gave that speech, and I shook his hand at that time. While at Crozer in 1961, he came there to give 3 lectures for the Crozer Lecture Series. And so for 2 days, he was on campus, and we had a chance to talk to him and meet him. So I've had a very rich experience with him. Then, of course, I attended the March on Washington in August of 1962.